guys, and welcome to another episode of Classics on Audio. I'm super excited how far we're getting in this book. As I mentioned in in Friday's description, we are almost halfway through our book. We'll actually be halfway during this chapter. And so because of this, I was like, I don't know if we'll have enough time for another book in August. So I wanted everyone to please answer a form. Link down in the description. I was thinking that maybe in August I could read picture books, but I'll also add onto the form if you'd like me to just continue with regular classics on audio. I might combine several chapters in an episode, or I might just pick a shorter book. So please go down into that description. Also, if you haven't subscribed already, subscribe and hit that notification bell. If you are currently on my mailing list from when I did my private channel, I'm no longer going to be continuing that. So go ahead and make sure that you subscribe and hit that notification bell, so that you make sure that you still get emails whenever I post my videos. So without further ado, we have Chapter 9, Check for Miss Brownell. Check for Miss Brownell. Chapter 9. Emily and Isla were sitting on the side bench in the schoolroom. Isla had asked if they could, and Miss Brownlee had said yes, although she still disliked Emily and often made fun of her. The side bench was everyone's favorite. You could see all over the school without turning your head. And Miss Brownlee could not sneak up behind you. It was the view from the window that Emily loved. She could look out at the spruce where the Wind Woman played, at the red squirrels running along the fence, and far in the distance, beyond the Blairwater Valley, she could glimpse the snow-covered and sand hills and deep dark blue of the ocean. Emily had totally forgotten that she was supposed to be doing fractions. She was writing a poem about the view, and was so deeply lost in her writing that she did not see Miss Brownell stepping softly towards her. Isla was drawing a picture on her slate, and she would have warned Emily. "I suppose you have finished your sums, Emily?" Miss Brownlee drew Emily's slate out of her hand and held it high. "What is this?" she sneered. Lines on the view spelled "view" from the window of Blairwater School. "Children, we seem to have a budding poet here." Emily shuddered. Nothing was more terrible than the thought of mean, petty Miss Brownell reading her precious poetry. Please don't read it, Miss Brownell," she stammered. "It's nothing. I'll rub it off. I'll do my sums right away." Miss Brownell laughed cruelly. "This isn't nothing, Emily. It is a whole slate of poetry. Think of that, children. Poetry. And Emily doesn't want us to read it. How selfish she is." Most of the children giggled, Rhoda loudest of all. Miss Brownell held up Emily's slate and read the poem through her nose in a sing-songy way. "Vista in some fairy dream," she chanted, shutting her eyes and wagering her head from side to side. The children's giggles turned to shouts of laughter. Rhoda raised her hand. "Please, Miss Brownell," she said, "Emily has a whole bunch of poetry in her desk. She was reading it to Isla Burnley this morning when she was supposed to be doing history." Perry Miller turned, and a spitball hit Rhoda's face. But Miss Brownell got to Emily's desk and stepped ahead of Emily and seized the bunch of poetry. "Don't touch them! You have no right!" gasped Emily. She had written the poems at recess when it was too stormy to go outside, and had meant to take them home right away. And Oh my goodness, I don't know why I'm so tired today. I apologize. And now this horrible woman was going to read them to the whole school. Miss Brownell flipped through the precious papers. Lines on a birch tree. Looks more like lines on a very dirty piece of paper, Emily. Lines to my favorite cat. A romantic tale, I suppose. The violet spell. I hope the violet spells better than you do, Emily. Lines composed on the blank of Blair water gazing at the stars. Crust with uncounted gems, those stars so delicate, cold, and true. Don't try to pass those lines off as your own, Emily. You couldn't have written them. I did. Emily was white with outrage. We have wasted enough time over this trash, said Miss Brownell. Go to your seat, Emily. She crumpled the paper and moved toward the stove. Just as she opened the stove door, Emily caught the papers and tore them from her hand. Oh my goodness. Oh jeez. I am so sorry, guys. I don't know why I'm so tired today. You shall not have them, she gasped, the moray look blazing from her face. It did not quite give the same impact on Miss Brownell as on Aunt Elizabeth, but the teacher stepped back all the same. I am coming to New Moon tonight to tell Aunt Elizabeth about this, she said. Emily was thrilled about saving her precious poems, but her excitement died quickly. As soon as she got home, she ran to the garret and hid her poems. Then she sat at the window and waited. Oh my goodness. Okay, quick intermission while I get myself together. Honestly, I got such good sleep last night. I haven't yawned all day. I think it's just like contagious yawning, you know what I mean? Like you start yawning, then you can't stop. Okay. And she sat on the window and waited. At last, Miss Brownell came striding up the lane. Long minutes passed before Aunt Laura came to summon Emily. Aunt Elizabeth sat stiffly by the kitchen table. Miss Brownell sat in the rocking chair, her pale eyes glittering with triumph. I am sorry to say, said Aunt Elizabeth, that I have been hearing some bad things about you, Emily. No, said Emily, I don't think you are sorry. Such impertinence, oh my goodness, such impertinence, said Miss Brownell. You see what I have to put up with? I don't mean to be impertinent, Emily continued, but you are not sorry. You are angry because I have disgraced New Moon, but you are a little glad that Miss Brownlee agrees with you that I am bad. I am ashamed of you, said Aunt Elizabeth. It was not as bad as you think, Aunt Elizabeth, said Emily. You see, be quiet, said Aunt Elizabeth. I have heard the whole story. You heard a pack of lies, said Perry suddenly, sticking his head out from the kitchen loft. Everybody jumped. Perry Miller, come down here at once, ordered Aunt Elizabeth. Can't, replied Perry. At once, repeated Aunt Elizabeth. All right, if I must. Perry swung bare legs from the loft. Aunt Laura shrieked. I've just got my wet duds off, said Perry cheerfully. Fell into the brook when I was watering the cows. Was going to put on dry ones, but just as you said, Perry, get your clothes on immediately, ordered Cousin Jimmy. Perry's legs disappeared again, and he chuckled. Aunt Elizabeth stood there and turned angrily to Emily. Emily, kneel down here before Miss Brownell and beg her pardon, she commanded. Emily's pale cheeks turned bright red. Miss Brownell smiled. This was victory. Emily would be ashamed forever. Miss Brownell knew that. Emily knew it, but Emily did not kneel. Aunt Elizabeth, please let me tell my side of the story. I have heard enough, said Aunt Elizabeth. Do as I say." Cousin Jimmy stared at the ceiling. "A human should not kneel to anyone but God," she said. Elizabeth Murray stood very still, looking at him. "Emily," she said at last, "I was wrong. I won't ask you to kneel, but you must apologize to your teacher." "I am sorry for anything I did that was wrong," said Emily carefully, "and I ask your pardon for it." Miss Brownell could happily have shaken. "Simple Jimmy Murray," she glared at Emily. "See you behave yourself in the future," she said. Emily ate bread and milk in the pantry that night, while the others supped on new moon sausages. They smelled wonderful, but Emily hardly missed them. She was writing her next poem in her head when Aunt Laura came in at last with ginger cookies. That was chapter 9 of Emily of New Moon. We are officially a little over halfway through the book, and so I'm super excited about that. I hope you all will come back soon for the next episode of Classics on Audio. There were a few things that surprised me during this chapter, like the fact that teachers would make fun of you in class, just all the things that aren't allowed these days but were allowed in the time period that this book takes place in. Other than that, there wasn't much that really happened in this chapter. You can tell that Perry's starting to step up for Emily, but he's still his joking, uneducated self. So I hope you guys enjoyed this chapter of Emily of New Moon, and I'll see you soon.